This week's episode of Invest Like a Boss is brought to you by Indeed.com. Now, when you go to Indeed, you probably think it's that site to get a job with that huge corporation, but I want to let you know they are just as effective for the small businesses as well. And hires for small businesses are even more important because one person can make a huge difference. So to get you started in the right direction, Indeed is offering a free $75 credit to upgrade your job post when you head over to Indeed.com/iLab. That's Indeed.com/ILAB. I'm going to tell you more about Indeed at the break. Until then, let's get the show started. Offer valid through March 31st. Terms and conditions apply.
Welcome to the Invest Like a Boss podcast.
I'm Sam Marks.
And I'm Johnny FD. We're self-made entrepreneurs who invest our own money and use modern technology to invest like a boss.
Join us each week for exclusive interviews with our network of modern investors, business owners, and multimillionaires to discover new ways to invest our hard-earned cash.
Hey guys, this is Johnny, and welcome to episode 169 of the Invest Like a Boss podcast. I am here with Derek. Welcome to the show.
Thanks, Johnny. What part of Sri Lanka are you at now? I know you were moving around a lot.
Yeah, I just spent a week in Hikkaduwa, which is a beautiful little quiet beach. It's actually a really popular kind of touristy beach. I went there to kind of get away, clear my head after the breakup, as you guys learned in my Q4 update. But now I'm a new man, new lease on life, back in Ahagama, my favorite beach in Sri Lanka.
Uh-oh, watch out. We got a single Johnny out at the beach.
Yeah, if you've been following my Instagram stories at Johnny FDK, you'll see that life is actually not bad. It's not too bad here. What about you?
Sounds good. Things are looking up here in LA too. I got out of here last weekend. I went to I went to Vegas for a few days. It was a nice little refresher. And after about 3 days in Vegas, though, I'm ready to come home. And good news is they just lifted the stay-at-home order here in Los Angeles. So we get the pleasure of getting to eat at a restaurant outside. I'm actually really excited for that starting in 3 days. Excited for that.
Yeah, nice. And in Vegas, were things open?
They are. It's not the same Vegas, I'll tell you that. But, clubs are closed. A lot of restaurants are still closed. But the ones that are open, you can go inside, wear a mask, and then once you're at the table, you can take the mask off. So it's miles ahead of where we're at in LA. So, I'll take what I can get.
Okay. And so the hotels are open, the casinos are open and everything?
Oh yeah. They got those open. It's crazy. All the like craps tables and poker tables, they have plexiglass between every person sitting down. It's kind of a trip.
Oh, wow. Okay. But, still sounds fun. But yeah, I've been in Vegas for more than 3 days at a time, and it's too much. I think 3 days is kind of the sweet spot. 1 day is too little. 5 days is too much.
For sure.
Yeah. But if you're going to exit rich and have a bunch of cash to blow, why not celebrate in Vegas? I think it's the best place in the world.
That could be a good point, which brings us to the way to exit rich. Our guest this week, Michelle Seiler Tucker. She has a new book. It's actually called Exit Rich, and it's all about how to sell your business for your maximum amount of money and all kinds of good tips about how to sell your business, how to get it ready to sell. It sounds like there's a lot of businesses out there that don't even consider the step to prepare to sell their business. They call an agent up like Michelle and say, okay, I'm ready to sell. Let's do it tomorrow.
Yeah, and actually, it's a pretty long process. It almost killed Sam, like literally. So Sam sold a business. I've done it too. Mine was actually pretty straightforward and simple because I actually followed a lot of these steps while building my business and kind of by accidentally, but also because my mentor, Anton, he had sold businesses before. So he guided me well through his course. So this book is going to be very, very helpful for anyone who's considering either buying a business or you have a business that maybe one day you might exit. It's better to know this stuff now than, down the line when your business is dying and nobody wants to buy it and you have to sell it for a fraction of the price, or maybe it never gets sold, like we're going to hear about in this interview.
Well, let's figure out how to avoid that. Here's Michelle Seiler Tucker. She's going to talk about her GPS model that she's trademarked and her 6 Ps to having a successful sale of your business. Book's called Exit Rich. Here's the interview.
And stay tuned to the end because Derek and I are going to talk about the lessons that we learned and also the lessons that I took away from my sale and Sam's sale. Let's take a listen.
When you think of posting a job, you might think Indeed.com is just for those large corporations with thousands of employees. But in fact, Indeed is just as effective for the small companies. Take us here at Invest Like a Boss. We're just 3 people, Sam, Johnny, and myself. We definitely understand how important just one great hire can be. So you should check out Indeed.com because they are the hiring site that helps you find quality candidates with Indeed Instant Match. Indeed searches through millions of resumes in their database to help show you great candidates instantly, so you can do the part you really need faster, meeting and hiring great people. Unlike some other hiring sites, Indeed gives you full control and payment flexibility, giving you a quality shortlist faster. There's no long-term contracts. You can pause your account at any time, and you only pay for what you need. With Instant Match, you will see a list of great candidates with absolutely zero wait. In fact, Indeed delivers 4 times more hires than all the other job sites combined. That's according to Talent Nest. So if you want your quality shortlist fast, you need Indeed. And right now, our listeners are going to get a free $75 credit to upgrade your job post at Indeed.com/iLab. This is Indeed's best offer anywhere. So get your free $75 credit at Indeed.com/iLab. That's Indeed.com/ILAB. Offer valid through March 31st. Terms and conditions apply. We recently found out last year our hottest shows on Invest Like a Boss were about buying businesses. So I thought it'd be interesting to have a guest on to talk about the other side of this, selling your business. And why not have an expert who sold over 500 businesses through her firm? Her name is Michelle Seiler Tucker, author of the new book called Exit Rich. Thank you for joining Invest Like a Boss. How are you doing, Michelle?
I'm doing great, Derek. Thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
Definitely. I am excited to talk about this. Why don't you give our listeners a little bit more about your background, how you came into the M&A world, and what we need to know about you?
Sure. So I've always been an entrepreneur. I've always said I'm going to be my own boss and not work for anybody. Even as a little girl, you know, I was never a typical little girl. I never played with toys or dolls or anything like that. I would always walk around with a notebook, and I'd walk up to complete strangers and ask them a bunch of questions.
Love that.
And so my mom's like, she's going to be the next Barbara Walters. So I was just always curious about people. And I've always been a people person. I've always been a problem solver. And I did kind of get sucked up into corporate America when Xerox recruited me. And I'm like, oh, yeah, I should try corporate America. So I did that. And within 6 months, my nickname became the closer, because when somebody couldn't close a deal, they would call me and I could always get the deal done. So my nickname was the closer. So within 6 months, my supervisor came to me and said, Michelle, you really should throw your name in the hat and apply for the regional vice president in Xerox. She goes, you're not going to get it because you're applying with people who've been here for 5, 10, 15 years. And you've only been here for 6 months. And I'm like, well, why would I apply for something I'm never going to get? Sounds
Right?
like a colossal waste of time to me. Anyway, I ended up getting it, even when I was told I would never get it. So I truly am, I guess, a closer. And I hated it, though, because I went from sales to management. And when you're in high level management for a Fortune 500 company, you're having meetings to have meetings to have meetings to schedule more meetings. And then you're not really doing what you love anymore. So it was at that point where I said, you know, I love my 6 figures checks. I love my benefits. I love the people I work with, but I miss entrepreneurship. So I started searching for a franchise to buy, and stumbled across a company that had a couple of locations. My husband knew the founder, and I approached him about buying a franchise. And they said, no, we don't want you to buy a franchise. We want you to partner with us, and we'll give you a franchise. We want you to put us on the map. And I said, well, listen, I'm not going to leave my 6-figure career with great benefits, because I was climbing that corporate ladder pretty quick at Xerox. And I said, but I'll tell you what I'll do. I'll try it for 6 months and I'll keep my day job. So weekends, evenings, I would fly out to different events, franchise shows, you know, have my own trade shows, et cetera. And within 6 months, I sold so many franchises and made more money than I made an entire year, actually 2 years at Xerox. So I said, you know what, this is the right move. So I transitioned. So I left Xerox, went in to be a franchise partner. That's what started my franchise development, franchise consulting, franchise sales career. And then this franchisor did what most owners do. They focus on growth and they focus on sales. They don't focus on building a solid foundation to handle the growth. So if a company doesn't lay the foundation and they start growing at a rapid speed, I mean, I sold 300 franchises in a very quick period of time, then their whole house is going to come crumbling down. And that's what happened. So they were over-promising, under-delivering. They weren't servicing the franchisees. I'm friends with the franchisees. They're my family now. And so I was always taking up for them. Of course, my partner's mad at me, thinking I should take up for them. Anyway, I just realized very quickly that our values were not aligned. And that's when I said, look, you need to buy me out, because I'm not going to sell any more franchises, because I can't in good faith. And so anyway, they bought me out. And I'm like, oh, what am I going to do now? And I said, well, I should transition into selling companies, because how much harder could it be to sell a company versus selling a new franchise? It's a lot harder, a lot more moving parts, a lot more intricate details, a lot more emotions involved on both sides, buyer and seller. Anyway, so I ended up transitioning to selling companies. They did buy me out. And I started, selling small companies at first. And I transitioned very quickly into selling large businesses. And my company that I own has sold over 1,000 transactions. I personally have done over 500, and we've done thousands of evaluations. I also learned very quickly that what Steve Forbes says is true. 8 out of 10 businesses will not sell. So I said, gosh, if I don't start fixing these businesses and growing them and have a build to sell plan for the owner, I'm going to starve to death, and they're going to end up going out of business. So that's really what inspired me to really become the leading expert in buying, selling, growing, and fixing companies. So I buy companies and flip them like somebody would flip real estate. And I also partner with business owners, investing my money, time, energy, effort to grow that business so they actually have a sellable asset.
Sure. So that brings me to, let's just jump right into it. So when should business owners prepare to sell their company? Is it from the beginning? Is it when you're in a financial trouble? Obviously, there's a lot of different circumstances, but when should you really think about preparing to sell your company?
So the perfect time, the ideal time to sell your business is when your business is doing well. So you really should plan your exit from the start of starting your business or buying a business. And most business owners are like, oh, that's crazy. That makes no sense. Well, yes, it does. It makes perfect sense. Most business owners don't think about selling until an internal or external catastrophic event has occurred. So they won't call me until there's death in the family, or the owner died, or there's a partner dispute, or health issues, or, COVID. And that's the worst time to sell, because your business is not doing well at that point.
And I think that's why we saw the trend last year, at least with listeners on our show. They were all scrambling to buy businesses when COVID first hit. So maybe trying to capitalize on, something like that, when you're saying, that's the absolute worst time to sell.
It's a great time for buyers trying to acquire businesses with little to no money down and using the assets of the business to purchase the company. That's a great time for investors and turnaround specialists. It's not a good time for sellers, because they're going to be selling for pennies on the dollar, or they'll close their business or have to file bankruptcy. So it's not the ideal time for business owners, because these buyers are not going to give you a premium price. So the best time to sell your business and exit rich instead of exiting poor is when your business is doing well and at the top of its game.
Exactly. So you're saying, think about how you're going to position your business to sell right from the start, which I think a lot of these business owners that we see overvalue their own companies because they put a lot of sweat equity into these businesses, and they're valuing their personal time. And maybe in their heads, they're thinking this company is worth X amount, when really it's worth, X minus 10 amounts in real life. So how do you talk owners into realizing an actual fair value for their company?
So the main reason the owners overvalue their business is not so much about the sweat equity. They value their business based upon what they need to do next. So if they're going to sell their business and retire, then they're like, oh, I need $10 million. I want to sell my business for $10 million. And then I'll look at their financials and, normalize their financials, and they're making $100,000. And I'm like, sure, you're not going to get $10 million for $100,000 of EBITDA. And I go, I
think that's like we see on Shark Tank. I made $10,000 last year, but I want 2.5 million.
Right. And so I always asked him, how did you come up with that number? And it's never based upon sweat equity or anything like that. It's always based upon, well, that's what I need to retire on. Or that's what I need to put 5 girls through college and pay for their weddings.
Which has nothing to do with their business.
Has nothing to do with their business. So business owners base the value of their business on what they need to do. So rather they need to get out of debt, rather they need to get kids through college, rather they need to pay for daughters' weddings, rather they need to pay for retirement, buy another business, start another business. That's how they base the value of their business. So what I do is I take them through the process. I take them through the GPS exit model. I take them through the 6 Ps, and then I take them through the process and what I call the buyer sanity check and the seller sanity check. And I explain to them, what buyers buy, what buyers are willing to pay money for. And it's typically a multiple of EBITDA, earnings before interest, taxes, depreciation, and amortization. And you're not going to get 20 times multiple if you don't have the right synergies in place. And most businesses do not have the right synergies in place to get a high multiple like that. And then I show them industry standards. I show them business comps. I sit down and explain to them, if a buyer was going to buy your business and pay you $10 million and you're making $100,000, this is how long it would take them to get their money back. So it would take them forever to get their money back. So it just doesn't make any sense. So anyway, I go through that whole process with them. Most M&A advisors, business brokers, a lot of them don't do that. They'll just take the listing or the engagement for whatever the seller wants and stick it up there on the listing sites and hope somebody will bite and then educate the buyer. Educate the seller. That's the wrong protocol. It's really the broker's job, the M&A advisor's job, to educate the seller on the value of the business. So if my sellers are not realistic and they won't listen to me, I tell them to go call another broker because I'm not your person.
Sure. So do you think the reason 80% of businesses don't sell is because they are overvalued?
I think there's a lot of reasons. Number one, they are overvalued. They're overpriced. They're not functioning on all 6 Ps. The business is dependent upon the owner. You pull that owner out of the business, there is no business. So there's a lot of reasons why they don't sell, but the number one reason is they're overpriced. And number 2 is that they don't function on all 6 cylinders, all 6 Ps. They haven't built a business that buyers actually want to buy. And that's why you should plan your exit. You should really build a business that buyers are willing to pay you top dollar for.
Sure. So let's go over a couple of those principles quick. I don't want to give away the whole book. It is called Exit Rich, which
we could talk for 20 hours and not give away the whole book. There's so much content in this book.
Well, that's good. That means there's a lot of good content in there. Once again, it's called Exit Rich. Michelle Seiler Tucker is our guest. Let's start with one I kind of read up on a little bit. I'll be honest with you. I didn't read the entire book, but I got a couple chapters in. Your GPS model. Tell us a little bit about that.
So my GPS exit model is what I call the Seiler Tucker GPS exit model. And this is a roadmap for business owners. So again, the biggest mistake the business owners make is they don't plan their exit. They don't think about selling until they have to. We plan for everything else in our life, but business owners don't plan for their biggest assets. So number 1 in a GPS exit model is you need to know where you're going. Most business owners don't know where they're going. They have no end game. They have no destination. No desired price tag. So when you want to drive somewhere, what's the first thing you do? You pull out your phone, right? You plug in your destination. Your car needs to know where you're going. So same thing with your business, because you need to figure out where you're going. What is your end game? What is your desired sales price? Otherwise, business owners are just driving around aimlessly. They're going around and around in circles. They're driving up and down those financial hills to end up nowhere. In most cases, to end up out of business, okay? Because so many businesses will go out of business. So you need to plug in your destination. You need to know, what do you want to sell your business for? If you want to sell your business for $20 million, then great. We got a number. We got something to work with, right? So say, okay, I want to sell my business for $20 million. Now, what do you need to know in the GPS formula? You need to know where you're starting from. What's your current location? What is your current valuation? What is your business worth right now today? And you'd be surprised how many business owners have no idea what their business is worth. You know, most humans will get an annual physical checkup, right? We bring our car in to get a checkup, tune up. We bring our pets in to get checked up, but we never get a checkup or an evaluation on our business. Most business owners have no clue what their business is worth. And you should always get a valuation checkup every single year, because there are events that can cause your business to increase in value or decrease in value, like COVID. COVID has caused some industries to really increase, where others have plummeted and are decreasing. So you need to know where you want to end up, $20 million. Then you need to know where you're starting from. So let's say you're starting from $5 million. You're worth $5 million today. You want to sell for $20 million. Now you need to know time frame. So let's say you want to do that in 7 years. Got a business you want to sell for $20 million. You're worth $5 million today. You want to do this in 7 years. Now you need to know who your buyers are. Buyers, not buyer. A lot of sellers will say, oh, I got a buyer I'm going to sell it to. I can almost promise you that buyer's not going to buy your business. Okay. Most buyers that sellers are working with, the deal never comes to fruition. So you always want to have backup buyers, because deals fall apart. So you want to have buyers, not buyer. There's 5 different types of buyers. I'll tell you who's not going to buy a $20 million company. It's going to be a first-time buyer. First-time buyers are not going to be able to afford a $20 million company. Turnaround specialists will not buy a $20 million company because they buy distressed assets, right? Mm-hmm. So who's going to buy your company? Either a private equity group, a strategic/competitor, or a serial entrepreneur. So now you need to know, okay, those are my 3 types of buyers. What do the financials have to look like? For me to sell a $20 million company, where do the gross revenues need to be? Where does the cost of goods need to be? Profit margins, most importantly, EBITDA, earnings before interest, taxes, depreciation, amortization. Where does that number need to be? To get $20 million, you need to have at least $2 to $3 million in EBITDA, at least. Okay. Then you need to ask yourself, those buyers, what are they looking for? Okay. What synergies will they pay more money for? How do I build my business to meet their buying criteria? And then you build to suit. You know, just like when you start a business, what do? You do market research. You find out who's your ideal client. What's your customer acquisition cost? What problem are you solving? What makes you different than anybody else? Same thing with building your business to sell. Who's your ideal buyers? What's their financial criteria? What's their buying criteria? What's the characteristics that they look for? Okay. And then you need to know your why. And the reason everybody's like, well, what do you mean by why? Everybody knows that you have to have a strong enough motivation to keep you in the game. And that's your why. Why do you want to sell your business for $20 million? You have to have a really, really, really strong reason why you want to accomplish that goal. Because if you don't, you'll never do it. If it was easy to sell a $20 million business, everybody would be doing it, right?
Exactly.
So you have to have a strong enough why to keep you in the game, to keep you motivated. It's not easy to stay in business. There's a lot of financial hurdles. There's a lot of catastrophic events that occur, internal and external. So you have to have a powerful enough why to keep you in the game. So that's really the GPS exit model. Does that make sense?
Totally. I mean, I think a lot of people just get caught up in growing their business, and then they never think about the exit strategy. So all of that it makes sense. It's just the exact inverse of the start. And right. I could see a lot of people missing that whole principle though at the same time.
Right. And you got to reverse engineer it. You know, you got to get a plan, $20 million and reverse engineer it. But a lot of people are not even so busy growing their business. They're so busy just being stuck in their business. Sure. You know, and doing the day-to-day transactions. I mean, so many business owners wear so many different hats. And I think if you want it done right, you have to do it yourself. Or so many
and I think that's why they can't take an outside look to the actual status of their business too, because they're too involved inside it.
They're too involved, right? And then they're control freaks. A lot of entrepreneurs don't want to let go of things because they're control freaks.
I've run into that problem myself. I'm working on that.
You got to work on that, because here's the bottom line. I mean, you don't grow a business, you grow people, and people grow the business.
Exactly. That's
if a
definitely
business
one
is
of the things I'm working on right now is learning to put trust into other people and not have to do everything yourself.
Yep. And people is number one in the 6 Ps.
So let's go over the 6 Ps. I think that's the fourth time you brought that up now. So I feel like Michelle is really into her 6 Ps. Let's go over
the
those
reason
briefly.
here's why I'm into my 6 Ps. Because even if you don't want to sell your business, and even if you say, well, I'm never going to sell my business, which is really a bad attitude because you never know what's going to happen. I mean, I had a client that got diagnosed with prostate cancer and he had like a year or two to live, I had another client that had a massive heart attack and died. So you just never know. You should always build your business that it is sellable if something happens to you. Okay. So the reason the 6 Ps are so important is because I go back to my franchisor. When I partnered with this franchisor, he never built a solid foundation. So therefore, the house of cards came crumbling down on them because they didn't put all the structure in place. So the 6 Ps are designed to build a sustainable business that can scale. And when you're ready, sell. Okay. So number one is people. And the reason people are so important is because like you right now, you probably don't have a business to sell because you're doing everything, right?
Sure.
And same thing, like I have a dentist, a dentist that wants to sell. We're actually selling one of their relatives' agriculture business. And they said, well, we want you to sell the dentist practice. I go, how many dentists? And they said, one. He's the owner. He has a couple hygienists. I said, it's not sellable. He's got to get an associate in there. Or if we do sell it, he's got to stay on for 2 to 3 years. Is he willing to stay on? And they said, no. And I said, well, then it's not sellable. Okay. Same thing with chiropractor. Same thing with interior decorator. Same thing with, podcast hosts, if they don't have a business. So the bottom line is you got to have people and you got to have people in the right seats. A lot of companies will have people, but they have them in the wrong positions. And then you have to ask the who question, Derek. You have to ask, who opens the door? Who deals with clients? Who handles customer service issues? Who handles legal, accounting, logistics, transportation, manufacturing, environmental? Who handles all of this? And the clue, Derek, is you should never be next to the who.
Okay. Like
so there's some things that probably only you can do, like, host your podcast. But you can get other hosts in to host your podcast as well. You want to create a business that works for you rather than you working for it, because buyers don't buy a job. Buyers want to buy a business, not a job. So the who's are really important. The people in your organization is everything. Number two is product. So you have to ask yourself, your product, your industry, is it on the way up or is it on the way out? Restaurants are where? On the way out right now.
For now. Yes.
For now. And that's the thing about industries. Your industry could be up here and then something can happen and bam, it's down here. Look at oil right now. Oil has had a terrible last 3 years, and I don't think it's going to get any better anytime soon. So you got to ask yourself, do you have an Amazon or do you have a Blockbuster?
Mm-hmm.
If you have an Amazon, that's awesome. If you have a Blockbuster, time to pivot. And you need to start asking yourself 3 transformational questions. This is what Amazon did. Amazon asked themselves, what business are we in? And they said, you know what? We sell books. Then they asked themselves, what do we do really, really, really well? And I said, we do fulfillment really well. Then they asked themselves, what business should we be in? And they said, we should be in a fulfillment business. Sounds simple, but these 3 transformational questions transform them into a bookseller company, into a multi-billion-dollar worldwide conglomerate. Those 3 questions. But a lot of times when you're in your fog, it's foggy. And when you're in the middle of the chaos, it's hard to see your business clearly. So you really need an outsider's perspective. Does that make sense?
That totally makes sense. Yeah.
So, and then the next P is processes. And processes are so important and typically overlooked. A lot of business owners don't even think about processes until something bad happens. Like somebody gets hurt in manufacturing. Oh, we need a process for that. Client complains and puts it all over the internet. Oh, we need a process for that. No, you really need to develop your processes from the beginning and tweak them as you go. Back in the 40s, I don't know if you ever watched the movie The Founder, based upon the McDonald's story.
Oh yeah, I really like that with Michael Keaton.
Great movie, right?
Yes, it was great.
Fabulous movie. I mean, the McDonald's brothers started McDonald's, but then Ray Kroc came in and grew the business and then pretty much stole it from the McDonald's brothers.
Yeah, he wasn't painted as the greatest guy ever.
No, he wasn't.
Great movie.
But there would be no McDonald's if there was no Ray Kroc.
Sure.
Because McDonald's would have never grown it to the way that Ray Kroc grew it. So anyway, on processes, remember back in the 40s in the movie, you know, they had the Sonic type restaurants where people would come out, roller skates, take your orders, and the food was always cold, took so long, and the order was typically wrong. So McDonald's brothers back in the 40s said, we're going to develop a restaurant, a fast food restaurant, and it's our mission or vision, but we want our customer experience to be this. We want our customers to get great tasting food that's hot, quick, 2 minutes or less. How are we going to accomplish that? And then do you remember in the movie, they took all their employees to the tennis court, to the empty tennis court?
Yeah, they did like kind of painted out like almost like an assembly line type process. It was a really cool scene. Yeah.
Yeah, really cool. And I did it all day because I had to keep moving everything because it wasn't working until they figured out who's going to take the order, who's going to toast the buns, who's going to cook the burger, who's going to put the pickles on the buns and give it to the client 2 minutes or less. Those processes that McDonald's started with is why you can eat at a McDonald's in Singapore, you know, Russia, Australia, USA, because of those processes. They have to be productive and efficient. Make sense?
Yeah, that's a good analogy. I like that.
And you know what else? Here's a big thing too. You'd be surprised. We're selling a $70 million company and they hardly have any policy and procedure manuals. They don't have no SOP checklist. So
I think we've seen this a lot where, especially COVID has really exposed this with a lot of businesses too, that there was no plan.
Yeah, because everybody's used to, you know, working in their building, working, you know, in the business, working in the office, and there was no plan. I mean, there was no plan that, hey, I mean, in New Orleans, we're a little bit more prepared, I think, than the rest of the country, because every year we have like 5 or 6 hurricanes. So
sure.
we have protocols in place to work at home, to make sure everything's in the server. Here's your backup files. You know, so we're probably a little bit more prepared because we're used to hurricanes. But in the rest of the world, you know, they're not as prepared. There was no plan. You're right.
Yeah. So I think we're 3 P's in: people, product, process. Proprietary is next. Let's go over that.
So that's the number one value driver. That will raise your multiple. And everybody's like, well, what's a multiple? A multiple is a number times EBITDA that you will get paid on your business. So the more synergies you have, the higher multiple you'll get on your business. Also, the higher EBITDA you have. If your EBITDA is over $1 million, that's going to raise your multiple. If your EBITDA is over $1 million, you're going to have a lot more buyers, which could create a bidding war. We're very good at creating bidding wars on what we do. So proprietary is number one. The more well-branded your business is, the more I can sell your business for. Think about this. What's the biggest brand in the world? The most valuable brand in the world right now? What?
Apple.
Apple. Nobody ever gets that right. You got it right. $189 billion just for the brand. Billions. That's not including EBITDA. That's not assets, inventory, real estate. That is just a brand alone.
Sure.
So build your brand. As long as your brand is still relevant in the mind of the consumers, we can sell your brand for a lot of money. Nobody's going to pay for Blockbuster.
Yeah, I think we've seen it's turned into the era of like the fanatical into brand wise. You got, you know, Apple, Tesla, things like that.
And it's always been that way, you know, like Heinz, you know, it's
Sure.
always been that way. Coca-Cola, it's always been that way, and it will always be that way. So branding is huge, but just remember this: a brand can fall out very quickly. Like Toys R Us went out of business; their brand is not worth a lot right now, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you got to make sure your brand is relevant. Number 2 is trademarks. Get everything trademarked. So many business owners start a business or buy a business. Think about this, or buy a business, and they never check to make sure, like they'll get a state trademark, but they never check the federal database to see if they can get a federal trademark. So somebody will be operating their business 10, 15, 20 years and all of a sudden receive a cease and desist letter in the mail and have to stop using that name.
Right.
And then you have to start branding all over again. So make sure you get a federal, it's devastating. It happens all the time. You'd be shocked. Make sure you get a federal trademark. on your company name, Exit Rich. I got a federal trademark on your podcast. Get it trademarked, because otherwise you could literally be out of business and all that time, energy, and effort, money you invested in your brand is gone. Okay. Patents are really important too. Patents will bring you a lot of money. We sold a company for $18 million that had 18 patents. You know, do you ever watch Shark Tank?
I do.
And what do they always ask on Shark Tank? Every time.
Do you have a patent on this product?
Right. Do you have a patent? Do you have a patent? Do you have a patent? So get a patent, protect it. The other valuable thing in proprietary that will drive up the price is contracts. So any type of contracts, manufacturing contracts, vendor contracts, distributor contracts. If you're a franchisor and you have franchisees, very valuable. Also client contracts. Client contracts are the most valuable of all because buyers want to buy cash flow.
Sure.
So contracts with customers proves cash flow. Right. However, here's the caveat to contracts. I will tell you, I've been doing this 20 years in the trenches, thousands of businesses sold. No owner ever has a transferability clause in their contracts.
I was just going to ask you about that. Yeah.
Yeah. You have to have that 2-sentence transferability clause. Very, very, very important because 99.9% of all deals are asset sales. So if you don't have that transferability clause, your deal will fall apart. Okay.
So are you saying that, let's say I have a certain client that I have a contract with, and I sell my business. Are you saying that most of the time there's a loophole for your client to exit out of that contract when the new owner takes over?
Yes, absolutely. I know a franchisor that sold, had 1,500 franchisees. The buyer did no due diligence. Their attorneys didn't really do due diligence either. That's what they're getting paid for. And when the close happened, they had a big meeting to introduce, the new owners and have a rah-rah party for all the franchisees. Two franchisees out of 1,500 transferred over. Two.
Wow.
Two. The buyer ended up having to file bankruptcy. They sued their attorneys and everybody on the due diligence team and won, but they ended up having to file bankruptcy because they didn't do their due diligence. So they can't force franchisees to come over. If that transferability clause is not in there, then franchisees can do whatever they want to. In this case, franchisees went out and started their own franchise.
Oh, crazy.
They all gang together.
So they all ganged up together.
Yeah.
Okay.
So make sure you have that transferability clause because your clients can wiggle out. Absolutely. And then
all right, we're getting down there. Next patrons.
No. You got to know this. Okay. Databases are very valuable.
Yes.
Databases. Facebook paid $19 billion for WhatsApp, and WhatsApp was hemorrhaging money. So you could be out there in the e-commerce space or the SaaS business, and you could be losing money like crazy. But if you have a bunch of users, buyers will pay a lot of money for that. So WhatsApp had 1 billion users, and Facebook knew they could monetize and ROI that.
Yeah. Data is huge, especially now.
Yeah.
We're talking patrons next on the P's.
We are. The only other thing I want to mention about proprietary is IP real estate. So if any of your clients are in e-commerce, or if any of your listeners are in e-commerce, and let's say they manufacture bedding or pillowcases or whatever, and they're number one on Wayfair, guess what? A strategic will pay a lot of money for that. Let's say you have a skincare product and you are number one on Oprah's list, on Oprah's favorite things, and Oprah is endorsing you. Huge. You've worked with celebrities before. Celebrity endorsements add a tremendous amount of value and will create a bidding war. And that's part of proprietary. Now we can move on to patrons.
Okay. Sounds good.
So patrons is really your client base. Most businesses follow the 80-20 rule, which 80% of the revenue comes from 20% of their clients. If you lose a couple clients, you could practically be out of business. And you also want to make sure you don't have customer concentration. You need customer diversification. Also, I know your listeners are mostly younger listeners, but I have clients that have been in business 20, 30, 40 years, and their customers have aged out, and they did nothing to innovate and go after those millennials. Millennials don't purchase products and services the same way that baby boomers do. So you really got to make sure that you innovate and diversify and go after that younger market. Otherwise, you'll be out of business.
I think the theory is to capture them young and keep them. I mean,
You can
Correct.
capture money young and keep them, but baby boomers, when they start aging out, they're not buying at the same level they used to.
Sure.
Yeah. So that's the problem. So you always got to make sure that you're innovating.
Definitely.
That's the number one reason businesses go out of business is because they stop AIM. AIM is always innovate and market.
Totally makes sense.
Okay. And then the last P, which you're probably anxious to get through the P's, is process. You've been patient. I'm sorry, profit.
Profit. I was going to correct you, the one who's done the P's.
Profits. Everybody wants to be in business to make money. So here's the deal, Derek. Profits is never the problem. Never the problem. It's always a symptom of not running on one of the other 5 P's. Clients will come in and say, Michelle, I have a profit problem. I'm not making any money. I'm like, no, you have a people problem. You don't have any people. You're doing everything yourself. I was partnered with a business owner in the graphic space, and he's like, I have a profit problem. I'm like, no, you don't. You're making great profit. What you have is a people problem. You have one employee, husband and wife, and nobody's billing. Nobody's collecting money. Nobody's doing this. Nobody's doing that. So lack of profits is always the symptom of not having the right processes, not having the right people, not protecting your proprietary, not having, diversified patron base. It's always a symptom, never the problem.
That totally makes sense. You got to invest in people to increase your profits.
You do. Yep.
Let's move on to if you got your business, you need to prepare your business to sell. Now let's get to the actual sales process. What do you think, first of all, are the biggest things that people overlook when they're preparing their business for sale? I know we talked to prepare your business, from the start. Let's say just before you want to sell, what's some of the biggest things? An owner will come to you and say, okay, I'm ready to sell. What did they miss?
Everything we've been talking about. They don't have the right people in place, so therefore their business is not sellable. I have a chiropractic clinic we're trying to sell right now. And when he came to me, he's like, well, I have 2 chiropractors. Well, guess what? No, you don't, because they both told me that they're leaving once you're gone. So now we're back to ground zero and he has no chiropractors. So making sure that the business can run without you is number one. Because if the business is dependent upon you, and it takes a skill like chiropractic, or it takes a skill like dentistry, or it takes a skill like interior design, or a lawyer or something like that, it's very difficult to sell. Not impossible, but extremely difficult. Does that make sense?
Totally.
The other big thing that they overlook when they come to me is their financials. They have no idea what they're making. No idea. They'll know their top line, their gross revenues, but then when I ask them, well, what's your net income, what's your seller's discretionary earnings, they always look at me like a deer in the headlights. Oh, I'm
like, what?
I'm making $500,000. And I'm like, I look at their tax returns and it's $75,000 net income on the bottom line. I'm like, $75,000. Okay. Do you have the rest of this and personal expenses are not reoccurring? Right. And then that's when we have to normalize the financials. So a lot of times they think they're making more than they really are. And because they're living out of the business and running personal expenses through the business, they've never have kept good records. So they don't know what they're running through the business, and they expect me to be psychic and know exactly what they're running through the business, or they expect their CPA to tell me, and their CPAs don't know. Their CPAs don't want to know. So really documenting your financials. And if you are going to run your car and travel, meals and entertainment, donations, contributions, etc., have a list and keep up with it every month, every year, so that when you're ready to sell, you can make sure you tell your advisor exactly what you're running through that business, and then make sure that you can prove it. Because if you can't prove it, we won't add it back, because in due diligence, the buyer's going to make you prove it.
Exactly. So during the sales process, what are some of the biggest things that hang up or slow down the process, or even cause a buyer to back out of buying a business?
So, okay, number one, not being able to prove what they're running through the business and not being able to really prove their income. Not having transferability in contracts, not having transferability,
which we brought up earlier, yes.
Contracts, right. The other thing is not having the right people, not having a management team in place. So if the owner is leaving and there's no manager, it's like, we're trying to sell a manufacturing company right now, a fabrication company. 2 owners, both partners, equal partners, been in business for 30 years, 4 employees. You take these 2 owners out, there's nothing. All the information over the last 30 years, and like, oh, we can make anything for anybody. But where is it? It's all in their head.
Yeah.
So not having the policies and procedures in place, not really, you really got to have, like, if there's not a level of management in place, there really has to be documentation of what's in that owner's head. Does that make sense?
Definitely.
If I could just plug up a computer to all of my sellers' head and drain their battery,
and put it on a hard drive.
Put it on a hard drive, we'd be able to sell it so much quicker.
We'd see some good values for the businesses.
Non-competes is another big one.
Sure.
If there's a management team or, salespeople or some, employees that are crucial to the business, if there's not non-competes, that could hold up the sale or cancel the sale altogether. Not having protected your IP, meaning that you're really trying to get paid for your brand, but you don't have a federal trademark. And then we just find out that somebody else has a trademark on your company name.
Makes sense. So we had kind of spoken off air before this, and our listeners very well know that one of our co-hosts, Sam Marks, has sold multiple businesses, all the way up to $100+ million for one of them. He says in his experience that selling a business worth $2 million versus $100 million has proved to be just as much work. Would you agree with that? Or...
I would say selling a $2 million business is harder work.
Okay. Explain
it's harder.
Why.
Well, because a $2 million business is not probably in all likelihood not operating on all 6 cylinders.
Sure.
So they're probably missing stuff. They're probably missing people. Processes are probably not, efficient, productive, well documented. They might have some IP issues with their contracts, whereas a $100 million company typically has all their ducks in a row, right? They've got the people in place. They got their management teams in place. They have the non-competes. They obviously have efficient, productive processes, so they would have never got to $100 million.
Right.
So they're all operating on all 6 Ps. They protected their IP. They protect their proprietary. Also, the bigger the business, meaning the higher the cash flow, the more buyers we have.
It's a bigger
So
pool.
therefore it's easier and quicker. So I think it's it could be harder to sell a $2 million business versus 50, 60, 70, 80, $100 million business. There are more buyers for good businesses than there are good businesses to buy.
That makes sense. And
So at that level, we have a lot more.
That's the rarefied
buyers.
air of kind of the cream of the crop businesses. So
Correct. So it's harder because, and then also for $2 million business, our financials are probably a disaster.
Sure.
If they go clean everything up, when it's a $100 million company, they have audited financials.
Sure.
The financials are audited. Everything runs pretty smoothly. You don't get to a $100 million company and not have everything run smoothly and not have all your ducks in a row.
Totally makes sense. So in your experience, have most of the M&As you've seen use brokers or corporate advisors? And in either case, what are some of the fees involved when you're selling your business?
I would say, well, let's define this.
Sure.
Because you got business brokers that sell pizzerias and coffee shops and restaurants and flower shops and dry cleaners. And then you got M&A advisors like me that sell companies 10 million, 20 million, 30 million, 50 million and up. So they're not going to hire a business broker to sell a $75 million company, but they will hire a mergers and acquisitions advisor. They typically don't hire a corporate advisor. They might hire, if they think they have a buyer already in mind, then they might work with an M&A attorney to try to facilitate everything in their CPAs.
Okay. And then what kind of fees are typical?
So here's the deal. So what's typical in business brokers is a lot of business brokers now are charging retainer fees like $5,000, $10,000. M&A advisors typically charge, anywhere from $25,000, $50,000, $60,000, $100,000, depending upon the size of the transaction. And then the commissions, it depends. I mean, I've seen brokers charge 10%. I've seen them charge 8%. I've seen them, do Lehman scale, which is 6, 7, 8, 9. I've seen them do reverse Lehman. My firm, I don't charge retainer fees. I'm probably one of the only M&A firms that doesn't charge a retainer fee, because the reason for that is I'm the closer, remember? And if I don't think I can sell your business, I'm not going to take it anyway. And to me, that just speaks volumes and credibility. And
So just to be clear, should your business not sell, you're still going to pay the retainer fee?
No.
Okay. No, not to you, but
you're not paying me. Yes, to other advisors.
In other cases,
the business does it. Look, I have clients that come to me all the time. Derek, and say, if you charge a retainer fee, I'm not going to work with you, because I have one client that hired 3 different firms. One firm charged $75,000, another firm charged $60,000, another firm charged $25,000. He paid all 3. None of them sold the business, and I did, and I charged $0. And so a lot of these companies are out there charging big, hefty fees, and they can't close deals. In fact, a couple of them have called us and asked us if they could close the deals once they charge these fees. So, I'm not going to say I'll never charge retainer fees, but right now I don't charge retainer fees because I'm results driven. And I just feel like if I can't sell your business, then why are you paying me?
That totally makes sense. You believe in yourself and you're willing to prove to work for your fee.
Right.
So let's talk about the book. Obviously, that's why we're here. I think this is your 3rd book, correct?
This is my 3rd book.
So what can we learn from this book that we haven't in the first 2 already?
Oh my gosh, so many things. Well, first of all, I wrote Sell Your Business for More Than It's Worth in 2013. That was my first book I ever wrote. And that was more surface level about how to sell your business. And that was in 2013. And the business landscape has changed dramatically since then. It used to be that 95% of startups would go out of business. So 1 to 5 years were very risky. But then when I wrote Exit Rich in 2019 and 2020, I did the same research and learned that guess what? It's only 30% of startups will now go out of business. Only 30%. So all of you startups, go start your business.
Get to work.
Get to work. About 27.6 million businesses. Those businesses have been in business for 10 years or longer. 70% of those companies will now go out of business. So Exit Rich is all about how to stay in business, not just how to sell, but you got to have something to sell. How to stay in business, how to weather the financial storms, how to innovate, how to focus and make sure that you don't lose that market share, how to stay competitive, how to stay relevant. It's all the nuts and bolts that you need to have a successful business. I mean, Steve Forbes endorsed our book and said, oh my God, this is a gold mine for entrepreneurs, and every single entrepreneur should read Exit Rich.
Yeah, you got some powerhouse people here helping you along with this book. So one that really stuck out to us as a book that we brought up many times on the show is Rich Dad Poor Dad by Robert Kiyosaki. Mm-hmm. The co-author on that book was Sharon Lechter, and you actually got her to co-author with you on this book. How did that come about?
I did. I tell you, the first time I met Sharon Lechter, we shared a stage together, and I was so intimidated by her. I was actually I was so intimidated by her. Like, I was afraid to talk to her. I don't know why. I'm never intimidated by anybody. But last night I was on her birthday show. She had a birthday yesterday. So reach out and tell her happy birthday.
Yes, happy birthday, Sharon.
Yeah, so I was on her Zoom birthday. So like I'm part of the family now. But I have a good friend of mine, a good mutual friend of both of ours, David Corbin. And he knows I'm wanting to really make some of the lists like New York Times. And he goes, well, you really should get a co-author. And he goes, you should partner up with Sharon Lechter. She should write this with you because she's a CPA. She's a financial literacy expert. She's been an advisor to several different presidents. And her husband is an intellectual property attorney. And she goes, that's a perfect fit for you.
Sure.
And I said, how can I get her to write with me? I can't even talk to her. I'm so intimidated at first. It's like, oh, Michelle, let me work it out. So he sent her the manuscript and she goes, I love it. I absolutely love the manuscript. I want to be part of it.
Very cool.
So that's how I got her.
One more famous person we talked about, we brought it up twice already, I think, Shark Tank. Kevin Harrington was one of the original sharks on that show, and he actually writes the foreword for Exit Rich.
Yeah.
Let's talk about that.
So I've known Kevin for years. I met him, again, speaking on stage. I meet a lot of people speaking on stage. Kevin actually used to be a business broker, believe it or not. Back in the day before he got into the as seen on TV king, he was a business broker. So him and I have always talked over the years about selling businesses and doing deals and all this stuff. And him and I are part of a mastermind, BA, which is a mastermind that we both belong to. Plus, he's very good friends with Sharon. And we both asked him, and he said yes, of course.
Great. We actually just started our own mastermind here with our Invest Like a Boss listeners. We love it. It's really fun.
Oh, awesome.
So last pitch. Why should we go out?
Speak at it.
Yeah, we'll invite you. Why should people go out and buy Exit Rich, which is available now, by the way? Tell us where they can get it and the number one reason just to pick up the book.
Well, if you don't want to exit poor, you should pick up the book to exit rich because there are so many principles and strategies and techniques that Steve Forbes agrees with, that Brian Tracy agrees with, Tom Hopkins, Jack Canfield, Mark Victor Hansen, Sharon Lechter. This book is just all about the principles and strategies of how you really have to think about, not just think about like a business owner, but really think about, what's the end game here? What's the big picture here? I'm probably not going to leave this business to my kids, so how do I stay in business and how do I retire rich? So all of those strategies are there. And look, 70% of businesses are going out of business. There's obviously a huge demand for this book right now. And 8 out of 10 businesses do not sell. So those are all the reasons you should go pick up Exit Rich. And we're in the middle of pre-sale. So you can go to exitrichbook.com and get the book right now for $24.79, which is less than Amazon. And that includes shipping to anyone inside the United States. So we will email you the digital download immediately when you order the book. We'll ship the hardcover to your doorstep. Plus, you will get lifetime membership into the Exit Rich Book Club. What does that offer? That offers me doing video training, really teaching on these different principles and strategies. But even better than that, it includes document downloads. Clients ask me, Michelle, I've never seen a non-compete before, an employee handbook, an organizational chart. I don't know what a sample due diligence checklist looks like, or a sample letter of intent, purchase agreement, closing docs. All of those documents, like people pay thousands upon thousands upon thousands of dollars for these documents. They're right there for your download for $24.79. You'd be crazy not to. And then we also include a 30-day membership into my Club CEOs, which is a like-minded entrepreneurial group where we really ask those transformational questions to help business owners survive and come on the other side of this pandemic and really thrive so they can exit rich.
I love it. Sounds like you get a lot of valuable content for the book. Check out exitrichbook.com. We'll also put the link in the show notes and anything else you want to add, Michelle. Thank you so much for your time, for coming on Invest Like a Boss.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me. It was fun. Thanks, Derek.
Boom. That got me excited. And actually, it's funny. Her 6 Ps reminds me of my favorite TV show with Marcus Leomas. He has the 4 Ps: people, product, process, and profits. But actually, she adds in 2 very, very important Ps that are missing. One is, is it proprietary? Do you have any kind of IP or anything that you can sell that maybe is could distinguish your business from someone else's or be worth something? And second is the patrons. So speaking of patrons, thank you for the patrons who basically sponsor these episodes and pay for Derek's salary, and you guys allow us to keep producing these episodes. But when she says patrons, she means customers and clients. So that's super important. Do you have any customer loyalty and brand loyalty? Derek, what did you learn from this?
I learned, I liked her quote, and she said, you should never be next to the who. And that was relating to, who does this, who does that. If you're the owner and the answer is you, that just lost you value in your business. So I really kind of took that to heart, because I'm one of those kind of control freak guys where I want to do everything. But there's got to be a point where you gotta back up and let people do their job, or not. It almost kind of seems counteractive to me that the owner should be probably the least involved in the business to give your business the largest value. But that's kind of how it seems here, because you can't sell a business where the owner has to be 100% involved, because you have no business then.
Yeah, that's why we have you, Derek, because Sam or I get hit by one of these Sri Lankan buses, which is a very high likely chance for one of us.
So when you guys sell the business, I got to go with the new owners. I got it.
Yeah. So actually, as a breakdown of the business that I sold, or one of the businesses I sold, and also this business that Sam sold, we accidentally fell into these 6 Ps. So for mine, I sold an e-commerce store. It was dropshipping based, and it was kind of in the, let's say, the furniture niche, just to be very, very broad. I sold it for 27 times monthly profit. So if I was making, $1,000 a month in profit, it would be worth 27,000. If I was making 10,000 in profit, then it would be worth 270,000. So that's a pretty good multiple. It can range anywhere from 10x to 40x, depending on if you have these 6 Ps in place. So for mine, people, I was the one running it, but luckily I was smart enough to have had hired staff. So I had one Filipino VA, so a virtual assistant from the Philippines, getting paid $5 an hour to do all the books and the accounting. And I had one customer service person who answered all the phone calls and most of the emails, and only escalated it to me when it was just vital and he or she couldn't do it. So without that, you can see why somebody wouldn't buy it, right, Derek? Like if it was just kind of like, all right, here's the business, but nobody knows how to run it and you have no help, like what are you going to do?
Exactly. That never even really crossed my mind. I think she brought up the example of a dentist. If you have all these patients and they know this dentist and you're the only dentist there, you really have no value if someone else comes in because they want to see you. So
yeah, exactly. Yeah. So as far as product for mine, I spent a lot of time doing niche research, like literally months, and testing products. And that was a big reason why they bought it, is because they identified, hey, this actually works. This is something that people want to buy online. And they're willing to buy it from this store. And I had the 2 years of sales to prove it. The process was also a big part of it. Anybody could have technically taken Anton's course and followed the same process, but it was a process that he developed over 10 years, and I developed over those couple of years, and I had it all in place. So when a new order would come in, I had a process of how that gets fulfilled, and a lot of it was automated or outsourced. Same with the marketing was it was all set up already. The marketing funnel, the ads were all running, so they can literally just change over the credit card number to get billed for the ads instead of mine, but just leave everything else in place.
Yeah, I think all that sounds really attractive if you're pitching your business. It's like a plug and play business. So I see where you're coming from there.
Yeah, and I was smart enough where I had everything on a separate account. So instead of having it kind of mixed up in like my Gmail account with like my Google Sheets and accounting and then needing to transfer it over, I was smart enough to just create everything on a separate Gmail account. It was a G Suite business account. And I just gave them the password and said, here you go, take this. And here's the login to the Shopify. Here's the login to whatever. Yeah, just change over your credit card number so I don't get billed for anything anymore. And change your bank account number so the deposits and the profits, stop going into my account, which I'm sure they did first.
Yeah, that'd be step number 1.
Yeah. But yeah, it made it really, really simple. But actually, one of the reasons why they bought my store is because of the proprietary, it was a little bit proprietary. It wasn't, it was a product that I didn't personally have any like trademarks for, but my supplier did. And my supplier wasn't taking new suppliers because they had enough online suppliers. So they couldn't just start a store and, and copy me and, get the suppliers on board. And that is actually what made it really, really valuable.
Yeah, I get that. That's it's as cheesy as it sounds. If you watch enough Shark Tank, you kind of learn that a lot too. And like I said earlier, Kevin Harrington, who was on the original cast of Shark Tank, actually wrote the foreword to this book. And you see so many businesses just come in there and go, "Is it proprietary? Do you have a trademark? Do you have a patent? Do you have any of this stuff?" And most of the time, the answer is no. So.
Yeah.
It's crazy how often that gets missed, where people just don't think that, these big companies, if they see something that's a hit, they can easily rip it off. And I mean, look at Facebook. They've coined the term zucking now because he literally has a whole team that is just dedicated to ripping off other technologies.
Yeah. And, why wouldn't they, right? It's rude, but at the same time, that is kind of the fact of life. If it's easier just to copy someone and launch it on your own brand, why wouldn't you? So I think a lot of people make mistakes thinking that their business is worth more valuable than it really is. And when they go to try to sell it, they realize, hey, nobody wants to buy for $1 million just because you randomly thought your business was worth $1 million, because that's, the amount you would like to sell it for.
Right.
They need to go in and look at things like the 6 Ps and do the calculation. So the last two was patrons. I had my customer base and I had repeat clients, and we had a good, like a pretty good referral system through customers. Maybe not worth as much as if they were on like a auto bill or auto subscription, but definitely it was worth something. And the last is the profit. And this is pretty easy to calculate, where you just multiply 27 or 30 or, whatever number you agree on with the monthly profit. And for me, unfortunately, the business was kind of slipping that during that year when I sold it. I think my best months I was making $7,000 a month in profit, which means, let's do a little quick calculation. 7,000 times 27, the business should have been worth $189,000, almost 200,000. But because I had let it kind of slip down, just not paying attention to it and getting busy doing other things, my profits then, slipped down to an amount where now it was only worth 60,000 total. So, it was still a good amount of money and really helped me start my investing career. So I'm very happy I did it and I sold it. And I had, and to me, $60,000 was more money than I had ever seen in my life and ever had in my bank ever in my life and to that point. So I'm happy. But if I would have followed these 6 Ps, better, or sold when I was at the top instead of on a decline, I could have made a lot more.
So what was your reason for selling? Because I know Michelle said, a lot of times these businesses get trapped in a spot where, a life situation happens. Someone gets cancer or COVID happens and the business could potentially get ruined. So you might as well get what you can get out of it. Or it sounds like a lot of times it's a bad situation and someone will come in and swap up a good deal. Now, did you just see, what was the reason for selling? Where did you think you could not grow it back to where it was, or you saw it starting to decline, or was there a personal reason?
So it was all of the above, and often it is. It's often more than one thing. I was living in the town at the time, and I, was focused on starting all these other passive income businesses, and I actually had a second drop shipping store that was actually making, even better money at the time, and I kind of just let this one slip. It wasn't even mobile responsive at the time. I had built this in 2013, and when I had sold it, and I think it was 2016 or 17, everybody was, shopping on their phones, but my website was not mobile responsive.
Oh,
and if you've ever seen one of these sites, it just sucks, So I basically was missing out on all these sales.
Yeah, I was trying to reach out to a podcast guest the other day that we're looking to have on, and the contact information I found for them was on this website that must have been like straight out of 1996. I was like, there's no way this email is going through to them. You can just tell. And obviously everything's mobile now. People, your phone's in your hand 24/7. If you don't got that, you're pretty much screwed.
Yeah. So that was a big part where I had to decide, do I want to spend another month rebuilding the site from scratch? Because a lot of it was custom coded. It wasn't just like I could have just uploaded a new theme. Yeah, I would have to go in and just kind of delete all this code I had randomly inserted, in places and try to figure it out. And at the time I think I was going through some personal problems too. I was having a lot of haters online because I was so transparent with my businesses. And I was like really genuinely trying to help people, saying like, hey guys, this works. I'm living in Thailand for, $1,200 a month and I'm making like 10 grand a month. Like, you guys should do this too. And I was talking about it on Travel Like a Boss podcast. I was writing about it on johnnyfd.com, and I started getting a lot of haters. And I actually had somebody reach out, like email one of my suppliers saying, Johnny is scamming people. He's in Thailand. He's living in Thailand. He's not even in America. Like, there's no way these customers are getting, what they're ordering. It's all a scam. And my supplier, you know, she freaked out saying, Johnny, are you in Thailand? And I was like, fuck, you know, like, yeah, I'm in Thailand. But like, it doesn't, like, I don't need to be in the US to sell, you know, furniture. Like,
yeah, you don't have to show up to their doorstep and deliver it personally, you know?
Yeah. And like, it was like for a day, it was a lot of drama. And I was like, man, if I lose a supplier, my business is screwed.
Yeah.
So luckily, I was able to just talk to her and say like, look, at the end of the day, it doesn't matter where I'm from. I promise you these customers are satisfied. You're doing the shipping. You're sending it to them. You know, feel free to contact any of the 500 customers I've had with you in the last, you know, year or two and ask them how their service was. And I guarantee they'll tell you that we were very responsive. In fact, we're more responsive because I'm replying to them, you know, after business hours, and then I have my staff responding to them during normal US business hours. So whenever they call or email us, 24 hours a day, somebody's responding to them. And luckily the supplier, you know, we had a good relationship and everything was fine, but that was a scare. And I was like, man, if this, you know, random idiot hater, you know, ruins my business, I'm screwed. So that was another reason why I sold.
Totally makes sense. Any other things we got to cover regarding selling a business, I guess? I don't have any personal experience in selling a business, so I can't speak to it. I feel like I still got a lot out of this episode, though, and especially Michelle. She was really cool. She was actually sent me like a handwritten note afterwards, too, which is always cool these days in the world of you know, technology. You know, it's one thing to get an email, but she sent a really nice handwritten note saying she enjoyed the interview. So shout out, Michelle.
Yeah. Yeah, shout out to Michelle. And if you guys want to check out the book, it's Exit Rich, Michelle Tucker. You can find the link. We'll have it in the show notes below. And yeah, I guess we didn't have too much time to get into Sam's business, but he sold his for a lot more. I think it sold for, you know, close to $100 million. And obviously he had partners. That wasn't all, you know, taxes, wasn't all profit, but that's how Sam built his net worth. He has a full talk on it on YouTube. You just look for Nomad Summit Sam Marks, and he goes over the entire thing. Derek, maybe you can link that in the show notes. But yeah, it's a very, like, if he had these 6 P's in place instead of just having, you know, 2 of the 6, the business would have sold hopefully much quicker, and maybe he wouldn't have had such a headache.
Yeah, and I think Sam's got his toes dipped into a lot of different businesses. I know he's sold a couple others over the years too. Not for anywhere near that first one, but he was saying, you know, it's just as hard to sell a $2 million business as it is a $200 million business. So, and I think Michelle said it's even harder to sell the smaller ones. So it's kind of crazy, but yeah, it sounded like a lot of stress for Sam. And then he's talked about it a lot too, but after he sold the first big one and thought, oh, I'm retired now, I can do whatever I want to do, it was awful. He actually did not like his life at all. He kind of lost his sense of purpose. So that's something to think about too when you're selling your business. You know, what are you going to do next?
Yeah, definitely. If anything, you guys can move out here to Sri Lanka with me. Just we can grab some drinks. So Derek, that was fun. Michelle, thank you so much for coming on the episode. Good luck with the book launch. I think there's lots of valuable tips in there for anyone who's looking to buy, build, or sell a business. Big thanks to our Patreons for supporting the show. And we just finished our second mastermind of 2021. This one was in the EU time zone, European time zone, because the first one people loved. I mean, we had on, 20-something people, and they really loved it. But all of our friends in Europe and Australia and Asia were like, come on, guys. Like, it was 3 a.m. for me. So that's why we had the second one in this time zone. And if you want to be part of the next one, it's going to be we'll probably do it once a quarter, so every couple months. Keep an eye on the Patreon for that. And this is only for the $10 and up Patreon members, because we're trying to keep it, pretty small, exclusive groups. They're not recorded, unfortunately. Sorry, guys. But it's really so people can feel free to be open about their investments and portfolios. And speaking of which, in the Patreon, I've announced me buying actually 2 businesses or being a partial investor in 2 different businesses. So if you guys want all the details on that, check it out on the Patreon group. And that is for any tier. So even the $5 tier, you can have all the details for that.
And to keep it even more top secret, we're actually going to talk to someone from one of those businesses that you invested in, Johnny. So look forward to that coming soon. Just want to give a shout out on our reviews too. We love the 5-star reviews on Apple Podcasts. They're a little bit harder to find now. You got to scroll all the way to the bottom, just search Invest Like a Boss, but we really appreciate it. It helps grow the show. We're creeping our way to 500 reviews. Couple new ones. J.A. Jackson 1 back. This was just 3 days ago. 5 stars, great resource for a newbie like me, easy to listen to. We love having the newbies as well as the experienced people. So definitely appreciate it. Go back and check out from episode 1. And a lot of these episodes are not time specific, so they definitely handle the time well. One more. A Bovin. This show does a fantastic job exploring many different avenues for investing beyond the typical index funds discussed in most other personal finance podcasts. I particularly enjoyed the Worthy Bonds episode and ended up investing as a result of the podcast. Thank you for that. Make sure to tell them over there that Invest Like a Boss sent you as well. And yeah, we talk about everything. We go way beyond the typical index funds. There's so many topics we covered, but there's so many more we can get to as well. I know Sam, Johnny, and myself have a ton of ideas for future episodes.
Yeah, definitely. And if you guys want to know more about why we diversify and don't just have all of our money in index funds, check out the index funds episode we did on it, Invest Like a Boss. All right, Derek, great talking to you. And all of you listeners, thanks so much. Leave that review now, please. And we'll see you next week.
All right, see you, Johnny.
Thanks for listening to the Invest Like a Boss podcast. Join our mailing list at investlikeaboss.com to get exclusive access to our insider investment portfolios and our private members forum.
If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe on iTunes or your favorite podcast app. Tell your friends and leave us a review in the iTunes store. It helps more than you know. See you guys next week.